In an unprecedented move, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has invoked Article 99 of the United Nations Charter in a bid to establish ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. In a post on X, Antonio Guterres attached a copy of a letter that was addressed to the UN Security Council President, saying, and I quote, "Facing a severe risk of collapse of the humanitarian system in Gaza, I urge the Council to help avert a humanitarian catastrophe and appeal for a humanitarian ceasefire to be declared." Unquote. Remember, this move by a UN chief comes after decades. It's a rare instance in its 78-year-old history. The last two times it was done was in 1960 in the Republic of Congo after the end of Belgium's colonial rule, and in 1961 in Tunisia on a complaint by them against French naval and air forces launching an attack. In Iran and Lebanon as well in 1979 and 89 respectively, it was done. Now, the UNSC will meet in a few hours from now to discuss Article 99. Let's first understand what it is. Article 99 is part of the UN Charter, which is basically the founding document of the United Nations. Article 99 states that the Secretary General may bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter which, in his opinion, may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. Basically asking all 5 UNSC members, the United Nations' most powerful organ, to vote on pushing for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. UNSC, remember, also has 10 non-permanent members. On a rotational basis, each of these 15 countries holds the presidency for a month. This year, it's Ecuador. And now, with the invocation of Article 99, Ecuador is obliged to call a meeting of the Security Council, which is, as I said, expected to be held in a short while from now, around 10 a.m. New York time. Now, as soon as the United Nations chief made this announcement, there were mixed reactions. The sharpest criticism coming from the Israeli government, with their foreign minister, Eli Cohen, saying Guterres is dangerous to world peace. Will the resolution be passed, and what are the larger implications of this move? We talk about this on the show today. To talk more on this, I'm joined on the show by Daniel Carman. He's the former Israeli ambassador to India. Nivine Sandouka, activist, and Manjeev Puri, former ambassador, also joins us. Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for speaking with us on Mirror Now. I'd like to start with you, Nivine. What do you make of this move by the United Nations chief? A rare move. The Article 99 has been invoked by Antonio Guterres. Your first thoughts on whether this would help the war?
So I think it is an expected move, but it is a move that came after disappointment from the international community to stop the war or to start a ceasefire to prevent the killing of civilians in Gaza. And I think that it's a first good step, in a sense that it is going to be the first step whereby we can hold the perpetrators of war accountable for the atrocities that they do, whether they were Hamas or the state of Israel. And so I think it is a good move. And I think, inshallah, it is going to actually be taken seriously and the ceasefire is going to hold.
Okay. Daniel Carman, the sharpest criticism, as I told our viewers, has come from the Israeli government. They have been pretty vocal about their criticism against the United Nations move, as well as its chief, Antonio Guterres.
Sorry, was that the question for me?
This was for Daniel, Nivine. Daniel, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Daniel, I was saying that,
repeat, please?
as I told our viewers, that the sharpest criticism, Daniel, has come from the Israeli government. We're getting in mixed reactions from both the Israeli as well as the Palestinian side on this move, which has been announced by the United Nations chief. With your foreign minister saying that Antonio Guterres is dangerous for world peace.
Yes, if I may, before I react to specifically what you asked, I must detach myself, to say the least, from the saying that whoever did the atrocities or the perpetrators of the atrocities, as my predecessor here in this program has mentioned, there is no doubt in anybody's mind that the war that was waged upon Israel came from the atrocities that Hamas, a terrorist organization, did to the people of southern Israel: raped, decapitated, mutilated, murdered innocent civilians who were in their beds, in their villages on Saturday morning, 7 October. This is not the perpetrators, whoever the perpetrators may be, whether the Hamas or Israel. I strongly cannot accept this as a starting point. Now, talking about your question, I'm not representing the government of Israel. I used to be an ambassador to India. I used to be an ambassador to the United Nations. And I'd like to pour a little water, UN speaking, from the point of view of the procedure of the UN. Yes, it is a rare move to use Article 99. Yes, Secretary General Guterres has not used it, or previous ones have not used it too often, as you have mentioned, Congo, the civil war in Lebanon and other places, really a rare. And what it means is that instead of a member state, one of the 15 members of the Security Council calling for a meeting, it is the Secretary General who's calling for a meeting. It is a move. It is an important move. It is a declarative move, but it doesn't really have any influence on the fact that at the end of the day, it's the 15 members of the Security Council who will make or not a resolution or a statement to the press or a presidential statement, which are the three products of a Security Council, if at all. And the Security Council is now sitting.
Okay.
I have on another screen, as we now speak, I'm following the debate of the Security Council. It has started with a very harsh statement by the Secretary General, which I'm sure we in Israel do not like, because it's a one-sided statement, even though he mentions a little bit about the hostages and a little bit about the rockets. But when you hear the statement by the Secretary General, it's a statement that we cannot mostly accept. And I'm not talking about the government of Israel. I'm talking about the people of Israel. We cannot accept what he has said. Later, there were some speeches by members. And let's see how the day unfolds.
All right. Ambassador Manjeev Puri, just a short while from now, we will see that meeting happening and that discussion happening on Article 99. But if we see the past records of the member countries, except US and UK, everybody else has supported, at least most of them have supported a truce or a ceasefire for humanitarian aid to be passed to areas that are suffering and to people who are suffering. This time around, what do you expect to happen? Do you think the US and UK will go forth and endorse what Antonio Guterres has said, or will they still stand by what they have stood by over all these months?
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to make one or two straightforward points. One point I want to make to you, and His Excellency, the former Israeli ambassador to India, in a sense put it across. It's of course the decision of the member states, and member states count, and particularly the permanent five, they count. The general expectation is that if the resolution, which has been floated by the United Arab Emirates, comes to a vote, the United States and possibly Britain are likely to veto it. But the French ambassador, at least according to the reports I've seen, spoke a little while back and said, please give us a little bit more time. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the words used was, let us not run the Security Council car into a wall. which leaves you with some chances of a hint that there may be some kind of way out, but it seems a little difficult. That's the fact. Now, I think we need to understand something else also. You know, it was mentioned that no member state has brought it and so on and so forth. That's true. Member states also need, when they bring something to the Security Council, it's not just that you say it and the Security Council discusses it. The Permanent Five have quite a role in whether it even comes to the table and gets discussed. So the Secretary General bringing it under Article 99 is quite unique. But I want to draw your attention to something else. You know, the Secretary General is also under great pressure from his own people, UN staffers. 130 UN staffers have been killed in the bombings which are taking place there. He wrote this in his own letter. I was in Dubai during the start of the COP28, where the Secretary General spoke, and he felt constrained to mention the resumption of bombings in Gaza, even as he was inaugurating the COP28 on climate change. Now, you know, UN staffers, if you've heard, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Refugee Agency, the Children's Agency, UNICEF, every single one of the UN staffers has been unequivocal that what is going on is, you know, going against, in fact, the rules of war, this thing called collective punishment, going beyond the rules of proportionality and so on and so forth. So I think, you know, the Secretary General also has to stand up for his people, their views. And secondly, remember, Mr. Antonio Guterres is a former Prime Minister of Portugal, a rather important European country. He has been the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. He's in second term as UN Secretary General. His own legacy is also there. We know the power game. He knows the power game itself. He didn't do it right in the first day. But as he writes himself, 15,000 dead. And he's strongly condemned the Hamas attack, as do all of us, and everybody does. So I think we should also try and understand his position. And this is, of course, another way of putting tremendous pressure, including on the supporters of the Israelis, I mean the Americans, that look, at least for some amount of humanitarian assistance, let there be pause, because people are dying are being killed rather in an unacceptable manner and in an unacceptable rate.
Yeah. Daniel Carmen, do you resonate with that? The fact that, you know, okay, politics aside, all the geopolitical strategies aside, yes, you would like to respond, Daniel, I am coming to you. All the politics and geopolitics aside, all the stands aside, we have to face the fact that there have been civilian casualties on both sides, and these include children, these include pregnant women, and the visuals that come out of both sides are absolutely shocking and extremely disheartening. There needs to be a ceasefire, and there needs to be a humanitarian ceasefire.
Yes, I have to concur and agree with my predecessor about everything that he said. I agree perfectly. And what you said about the pause or the ceasefire, we call it a pause because it would be a temporary pause, like we had 10 days ago, which lasted a week or so. But when talking about a pause, it has to be in an unequivocal way certain that our 137 or 138 hostages, all of them return immediately to Israel. Without this, the pause will not be possible. We don't know exactly where they are. We don't know what their condition is. The ICRC is not permitted to see them. We can imagine what atrocities they are going through in the same way that they went through when they were kidnapped or when 1,400 people were massacred on the first day. So yes, a pause is possible. Again, I'm not speaking for the government, but I estimate that a pause is possible if our hostages are brought back, all of them, immediately. And that's also a humanitarian problem and crisis.
But that's the concern, Mr. Carmen, isn't it? That The word that is used is pause. The word that is used is paused.
Fine.
It should be end. The word that should be used is end to the war, not a pause to the war.
Well, the end of the war will be when Hamas all the terrorist military capabilities of Hamas will be eliminated. This will bring an end to the war. We are talking about the pause. The Israeli people, not only the government. We are sick of the rounds of hostilities that we have seen, and on the other side of the border, a terrorist entity which endangers the Gazans themselves, a terrorist entity that represents a vision that is an enemy to most of the Arab countries. If people don't know it, then we'd better know it. But I want to tell you that nobody supports the killing of civilians. On the contrary, we're very, very sad to see this. But we should look at who is really responsible for it. Did the Hamas circling themselves with human shields near mosques, near schools, near hospitals? That's not an Israeli invention. Israel does not bomb mosques or hospitals or schools. We should see who is responsible for all of this.
Okay, Nivine, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you very much.
Would you like to respond to that, Nivine? Yes.
Yes, both of my predecessors speaking. Thank you very much for that. Let's look at the numbers, and I think the numbers speak louder than anything else that we have been saying here. We're talking about more than 1,700 people being killed, mostly civilians, 46,000 people injured with no access to hospitals and no access to healthcare. People are literally posting and tweeting that their children have actually died because of hunger. We're seeing thousands of people standing in front of the UN waiting to get some food and drink for their families. We have seen footage of soldiers, Israeli soldiers themselves, entering Palestinian homes, taking belongings, showing personal things on camera and boasting about it. This is not killing Hamas, with all due respect. This is called collective punishment of Palestinians. Not only that, what's happening in the West Bank only proves this point. The enlargement of settlers, more than 250 people have been killed in 60 days. The settlements, the settler attacks, what is happening in East Jerusalem, this is a collective punishment against the Palestinian people, and it is much more than just taking out Hamas. There has been, in the siege itself...
Nivine, point taken. What you're saying is absolutely considered, but numbers can be given on both sides, isn't it?
Of course, there's a difference. Listen, first of all, I don't want to
compare. Numbers can be given on both sides, not just in Gaza.
All human life is a worthy human life. What happened also in the Gaza envelope, the 1,200 civilians killed, the rape issues that were also like a recent report, it's all should be taken into account. Nobody is denying that, and nobody is saying that there is one life that is more worthy than another. Unfortunately, we have seen this war that the 17,000 people is not enough. When is it going to be enough? This is the question. When is it going to be enough? Do you want to create another Nakba, another catastrophe? It's never going to happen. Children are being starved. Women are being killed. Personal videos and things like that, they're being shared. This is not eliminating Hamas. It is collective punishment. And that is why the world needs to stand up for that. In addition to that, it's not only happening in Israel and Palestine right now. We're also dragging the region into a regional war. Look at what's happening with the borders with Lebanon. Look what's happening with Yemen. Look what is happening in the West Bank. It's crazy. And if this continues, it only serves one purpose. It just serves the purpose of a right-wing extremist government that sits in Israel. When the pause happened, it was peaceful pause. Everybody saw the hostages getting out safely. Nobody interviewed them until now. But the videos, at least that we have seen, everybody was safe. The hostages that were released were safe. And if it proves anything, it proves that a military operation is not going to bring back the hostages. Only through negotiations, a ceasefire, protection of civilians, which is basically what the UN has been calling for, that we can bring back the hostages.
All right. Ambassador Manjeev Puri, one of the questions that was raised after this move was announced is that why this Article 99 has been invoked now? Why wasn't it invoked during the Russia-Ukraine war?
Shreya, I think, I mentioned to you several factors. One of them, and I strongly believe in this, that in this particular case, the Secretary General is under a great deal of pressure from his own people. There is also the question of his own legacy. Remember, you can say whatever about the Russia-Ukraine, but the Ukrainians are putting up a fight. There is a war happening. Every day on the screen, you see even the Ukrainians firing long cannons, drone attacks inside Russia and so on. Whether helped by the West or not is not the point. So, the three-letter word war, in a sense, qualifies. Anyway, it involved the Russians who are permanent members of the Security Council. So, that's one side of the story. But remember this, more than 130 UN employees have been killed. The Secretary General himself is on record saying 15,000 people are killed. And I understand where His Excellency, the Ambassador of Israel, comes from. I fully understand, and I don't condone terrorism at all in any way. From India, after all. But, proportionality is also important. Protection of civilians, we all, sort of talk about it.
Okay.
And why did the Secretary General, therefore, raise it here? Let's also remember, whether it's his conscience or the collective conscience of the UN, I'm afraid that also needs to be considered, and I would give a lot to that. And that's the case. Why?
Can I also say, Ambassador Puri, one of the criticisms, with due respect to Antonio Guterres, one of his criticisms has also been an earlier statement of his at the start of the war, where he said that this Hamas attack did not happen in a vacuum, and perhaps that is also something that is used against him. Now, what comes of this meeting, we'll have to see, but do you expect any substantial concrete result happening after this vote does happen?
So, let me turn to the Secretary General. Look, he's under tremendous criticism. He's been under criticism for various things. The Ukraine-Russian war, climate change not taking place. And in this particular case, everybody turns around and says, the UN is not doing anything. And more than that, what is the Secretary General doing? So you are absolutely right. But, had he been unequivocal in his criticism of Hamas, and he was, but had he not at all mentioned that, please, there is proportionality, even then, had he brought the Article 99 thing, he would be criticized. So that's something we must understand. But let's also remember, the UN's workers, especially those involved with humanitarian assistance, their own conscience and they themselves come from a certain perspective. And that perspective also needs to be understood. Whether the world, in terms of the power play, etc., will come up, I don't know. Again, I want to draw your attention. The general expectation is that the United States will not allow this resolution to go forward. That's the general expectation. But I mentioned to you that according to the latest that I just saw, the BBC ticker, it said that the French ambassador intervened and has requested for a little bit more time so that the diplomats can study it, perhaps talk among themselves. Remember, it won't look very good that the Secretary General is let down. After all, the Secretary General is somebody who the permanent five and the entire Security Council and the General Assembly has elected. So there are several elements to all this. But then again, you have to agree with what His Excellency, the Ambassador of Israel, said. At the end of the day, it's nations, it's their decisions, and, they play the power game. We'll have to wait and see a few hours more, or maybe a little bit longer. But there is pressure.
Okay, quickly before I wrap up, Ambassador Puri, this procedure, the deadline for this is today, right? It has to happen today, this whole understanding of document and voting on it? Or can it proceed further?
Yeah, the Security Council is master of its own process. The rules mandated that when the Secretary General made a reference under Article 99, the presidency had to call a meeting. Otherwise, if somebody else asks for a meeting, it's, the presidency has to take a call. Everybody has to generally come together. If there is major disagreement to even call a meeting, it doesn't. So there was that particular element which has happened. When it will vote, what it will do, it decides to take
All
its own
right.
time. They are masters of their own process, so we'll have to wait and watch, and let's see what happens.
Okay. Okay, and wait and
Yes,
watch we
certainly.
will. We'll have to see how that really pans forward. I'll wrap it
And
up here. Daniel Carmen, Nivine Sandouka, and Ambassador Puri. Nivine, I'm afraid I have to wrap this up. I have paucity of time. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us on Mirror Now and sharing your perspective on this contentious issue. With that, we are wrapping up Beyond the Headline, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Thank you very much for joining us right now. Bye-bye. Good night.